right, fellas. Like I've told you before, man, I really appreciate you coming here and doing this. Being here at ICAST, we were able to swing this, and crazy story, man. And like I said, I talked to a lot of kind of similar stories like this, but it's hard to tell. But I appreciate you opening up and telling us what happened that day. So before we go, Chris, tell us a little bit about you and your son here.
So my name's Chris Williamson. Son Brice Williamson. I'm 44 years old. My son's 20. He'll be 21 next month. And so we own and operate Williamson Outfitters up in the Panhandle of Florida. And I'm also a mechanical contractor. I know we didn't really talk about that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
nice.
there's a whole nother backstory behind that. But so we've been doing that since 2019. Been very successful. Of course, we do chartered, fishing trips and gator hunts, duck hunts.
I've been watching y'all's videos.
Flounder gigging.
It's badass. I saw y'all gigging too.
Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Guys staying pretty busy?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you duck hunting too, you said?
Duck hunting as well.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Shout out to you guys for doing that. We'll definitely like to share some of your videos when all this is said and done, because it looks fun. I'm gonna have to come down because like the duck hunting by us sucks. Yeah. I don't know if it's any good by you guys, but
it's pretty good. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't suck by us, but like problem is you have to know like somebody or get in, or most of these are private guides, and if you can't get into that spot, the public land sucks.
Well, that's the thing is we hunt all public land.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What are the birds you guys kill?
So 90% of what we harvest and what we see are diver ducks, like the redheads, bluebills, buffleheads. Get some canvasbacks. We actually recorded 18 different species last year.
Oh, wow, nice.
The year before, 21 different species.
Damn.
Including like snow geese and stuff. So
damn.
Yeah.
I'm coming down, dude.
Yeah, so, I mean, we catch a lot of hate because, again, we're hunting public land and, people don't want to draw a lot of attention to that area.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things where, if we didn't do it, somebody else is going to do it.
Yeah.
So.
We kill a lot of wood ducks. It's fun.
Yeah.
But
wood ducks are fun.
That's about it though, man. I mean, unless you get up to like the Outer Banks and all that, but whatever. It's fun. When we get a cold front come by and everything freezes, then it's game on.
Well, you guys get a lot of sea ducks up there.
A lot of sea ducks,
scoters and stuff.
Yeah. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But it's fun, but I don't know. If I'm gonna eat, like, I like to eat what I kill.
Yeah.
But it's also fun to shoot those too.
Yeah. A lot of people don't eat the diver ducks.
No.
But again, like what I tell people, they're like, I don't want to really hunt diver ducks because they don't taste good. I'm like, have you ever tasted a diver duck? Like, no. I'm like, well, it's like a steak.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can screw up a steak.
It's all about the preparation. Teal's delicious in my opinion.
Delicious, yeah.
It's like one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
So
that's good.
This started, how old were you when all this went down? And were you working on the water at this time, kind of doing what you're doing now? Or
so my dad in 1993, he started his own business. He started an AC service company. It's called Florida Air Specialist. And he grew that up until the time of 1998. He had about 5 employees. And of course, I was in high school at that time. And kind of the deal I made with my dad, because I was really good in school. I made straight A's. Mm-hmm. My dad said, as long as you make straight A's, you don't have to worry about getting a job. I'll take care of, if you need to get a truck or something like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get into his industry as far as the AC, side of things. So fast forward to 1998, I graduated high school May of 1998. And June 13th is when the accident happened. So it's, roughly a few weeks after I graduated high school.
Wow.
Okay. Now prior to that, me and my dad, I was very close to my dad. He was like my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And his name's Dale Strickland, by the way. My stepfather.
Okay.
But I considered him my dad.
Yeah.
And, we fished a lot.
Yeah.
He wasn't a big hunter, so we didn't really do a lot of hunting, but loved to hunt, passionate about fishing. Passionate about fishing. Yeah. So he had purchased, let me back up a little bit. In 1997, he was diagnosed with throat cancer. And so at the time he was a pretty big guy. You know, he was like 5'11", he weighed like 250, right? When he got throat cancer, they had to basically, you know, when they did the radiation surgery and everything, they took all of his saliva glands out and put a feeding tube in. I mean, he lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So, you know, he was, you know, like a skeleton basically. And so anyway, once he got through radiation and had the surgery, right before we went fishing there, you know, in June 1998, he was cleared by his doctor that he can go back out and do like physical activities and that sort of thing. He just had his feeding tube removed like a few weeks prior.
That's crazy. That's fast.
Yeah. So just to kind of paint a picture of, you know, his physical condition, you know, before we went fishing that day. So the day before, so June 13th, 1998, was a Saturday. So that Friday, it was, you know, at that point it was going to be me and my father, you know, going offshore fishing, you know, trying to go grouper fishing. And I was calling around to some of my friends, you know, like, hey, you know, we need to find somebody else to go fishing with us. So I reached out to my best friend, Tim Barden, who of course now he lives in North Carolina as well.
Okay.
But he had something, you know, planned. He couldn't go. And so I called my cousin, Adam Rogers. At the time, he was 20 years old. Of course, I was 18. And he's like, sure, I'll go. So it was like a last minute thing. He joined us.
Try to get at least 3 on the boat.
Yeah, 3 on the boat, yeah. So anyway, we launched on June 13th, 1998, we launched from Alligator Point, which of course is in the Panhandle. And we were going out towards Dog Island, which, you know, Dog Island, I don't know if you're familiar with the Panhandle. Dog Island is just south of Carabel.
Okay.
Yeah.
How far a run is that?
So it's about to Dog Island is probably about, what, 6 miles, 5 miles?
6, 7 miles.
Yeah. So from there, basically, there's a reef right there. We were catching bait first thing in the morning.
Gotcha.
Once we got bait, we went probably another 10 miles.
Okay.
And that's where we stopped.
Okay.
Now, if you can just imagine the boat that we had, my dad was real big on buying used boats. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with buying used boats.
No, not at all.
But, you know, you got to kind of be cognizant of what you're getting into. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't think about when they're buying boats is like, do I have an issue with the hull? You know, is it designed properly?
Maybe get a surveyor, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So the boat that my dad had at the time was a 20-foot Pro Line with a little cuddy cabin.
Yep, I know.
And the transom was like a drop-down transom, you know. So we got to our spot where we normally catch grouper. And keep in mind, too, this is 1998. So this is like pre-smartphone, pre-technology. I mean, now, I don't know.
Did they have EPIRBs?
I'm sure they had EPIRBs.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, you know, I mean, when I was 18, it wasn't something that
wasn't like push probably.
I didn't really hear the term of EPIRB until after the accident.
Yeah.
Right. You know, but like now, I mean, there's so many apps on your phone. So like, if you, like with us, I mean, we run guided trips almost every day. And so
it's a lot of equipment.
Lot of equipment, you know, we run 3 or 4 different apps. It's like, hey, you know, check it across, you know, a lot of different platforms, you know, just checking the weather.
Yep.
Back then, there was none of that. There was no smartphone.
Yeah. Like you can get live weather updates now.
Yeah, I mean, the internet was just coming into being, you know, at that time.
Yep.
So the point is that there wasn't, you know, I didn't check the weather. You know, I just relied on my father to make sure, hey, is it going to be a good day?
Yeah.
You know,
yep.
You know, I think Noah put out reports, but I think that'd be maybe in the newspaper. You know, I don't know.
Not always accurate.
Not as accurate, correct. You know. So anyway, that day was supposed to be a good day to go fishing, basically, right? So we go to our grouper spot after we catch bait, and me and my father, my cousin, grouper weren't biting that day. Okay. It got a little past noon on that day, and we hooked into a big shark, you know, and we're fighting the shark for a few minutes and breaks our line. So we re-rig, you know, drop down another bait, catch the shark again, breaks us off again. So now we're just like, you know, solely focused on catching this damn shark, you know? And so, again, if you can imagine, like all 3 of us, you know, are in the back of the boat, right at the stern, right? So we're standing there, you know, trying to catch a shark, and we finally catch the shark, okay? And it surfaces. Now, in my mind at that time, you know, I'm like, this is, you know, it looked like a 10-foot shark. I don't know exactly how big it was, but it was a big shark, and it surfaced, you know? So
you kind of fired up.
fired up,
Yeah.
and this huge, I think it was like a bull shark, right? It comes to the surface. And at that time, again, we're solely focused on this fish, or, the shark. We're anchored up, and we weren't really paying attention to what was going on around us. The wind started picking up, wave was picking up, and looked down at our feet, and we're standing like 6 inches of water.
Jesus.
So we had all that weight on the stern, the low transom,
and you're all back there.
We were back there, right? And started taking on some waves. And I don't think people realize, like, if you take one wave over the boat, like how much water is actually going to
fast,
go.
right?
Very fast. And, that particular boat it wasn't self-bailing, right? So started kind of panic. So me, my cousin Adam, my dad basically directed us, hey, you need to start bailing. He hit the bilge, but it wasn't pumped fast enough. And we're just at that time taking more and more, every wave was dumping just tons of gallons of water into the boat, and the batteries and everything are in the stern, right? So my dad immediately goes to the helm, gets on the VHF radio, and he gets out a distress call. Typically you say Mayday, Mayday,
yeah.
And again, without him not having proper training on what to do in emergency, you say, hey, emergency on the radio. Florida Air, which was the name of the boat, Florida Air sinking. And that's all I could get out before basically we were completely full of water.
Damn, so it happened quick.
Yeah, it happened quick. So my dad, if you can picture, my dad's on the radio. And that was the only distress call he was able to get out. My cousin is steadily trying to bail water out, but that's just, you can't bail out water fast enough. So my dad yelled for me to grab our life jackets. So we had all of our life jackets in like a big, like a bag, like a throwable bag.
Yep.
Thank God. And I think you can buy those at like West Marine. They already
rectangle bag that opens.
Yeah, it has a zipper on it. So we had all of ours together. That was life saving actually. And so anyway, that was stored in the cuddy cabin. So I jump up on the bow. Had like a little access door. Jump up on the bow, and I'm holding the bag. And I'm thinking, of course, at that time, I'm a big guy now.
Yeah.
I was like 100 pounds lighter then, but I'm thinking, man, if I put some weight on the bow, maybe I can, keep the boat from flipping over. But it literally, I estimate about 45 seconds to a minute is how long it took to capsize the boat. Right.
Jesus.
So my dad knew that the boat was about to capsize. He realized it was about to capsize. And he said, just jump off the boat. Everybody get out of the boat. Right. So everybody jumps in the boat. Now, at that time, the boat capsized and the seas were building from 3 probably up to 5 feet. It started just immediately got rough. In fact, this morning, I was curious, I looked at the history of what the weather forecast was in that area for that day. And it went from being like 5 to 10 knots in the morning to 20 knots around 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock is the time that we capsized, So, the boat's upside down, still anchored, and there's stuff just, ship floating everywhere in the water, right? But I'm still thinking about the shark. I mean, if you can, remember, we still had the shark that surfaced, right?
As he's still on hook.
He's still on the line.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And the boat's upside down. And you can still see his fin after the boat flipped. So I freaked the fuck out.
Yeah.
I got back on top of the hull, and my cousin, from my vantage point, I'm sitting on the hull looking at the stern of the boat, my cousin is off to the right. And he's swimming towards a cooler. My dad's basically yelling, hey, grab a cooler, and of course we had 2 coolers. We had one that had all of our bait that we were going to keep the fish in, and then the other cooler that had our drinks, our water and everything. So he grabbed a cooler. My dad's on the left side, and he's swimming for the bag of life jackets. Okay. And he grabs a bag of life jackets. Now, again, my dad just had, he's not in tip-top physical. Yeah. I mean, prior to that, he was an athlete and everything. He coached volleyball and all that. But he was very weak.
Yeah.
So I was yelling from the hull. I was like, hey, swim back, and they couldn't. They just could not fight the current.
Was it pretty strong that day, the current?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I jump in the water and I try to basically, I was very athletic. I played high school basketball and everything. So I was trying to pull them back to the hull. And of course, my cousin was a pretty big kid. But there was just absolutely no way I could bring him back to the boat.
Damn.
So I made an attempt to bring him back, and I couldn't. So I let him go, and I swam back to the boat again. Okay. And I'm sitting on top of the hull, and I'm watching them drift further and further away. And I'm thinking, man, we got to stay with the boat, But they couldn't fight the current. At that point, even if they let go of what they were holding on to, they couldn't swim fast enough. So I had to make a decision. I'm 18 years old. I'm scared. I'm on top of the hull, and
they're drifting away.
And I'm like, this is my father. And again, my stepfather who raised me from the time I was 5 years old. And I loved him, and I was very close to him. And I like, either I stay here and potentially get rescued, or I go be with them. So I decided to jump in the water and go be with them.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm just putting myself in that situation, I probably would have done the same thing.
Right.
Quick question: Did they have life jackets on yet while they were drifting, or?
Not immediately. No, they were basically holding on. So my cousin was holding on to the cooler. My dad was holding on to the bag of life jackets.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's crazy how fast sometimes that current will just I do a lot of diving, and I'll look and I'm just like, dude, you're
within minutes
so fast away.
Oh yeah, within minutes you couldn't see the boat.
Mm-hmm. So I would have done the same thing.
Yeah,
I would have jumped off and can't just watch them drift away.
Right. So we're drifting in the water. At that point, it's like we're shell shocked. It's like
what the hell just happened?
What the hell just happened? Like, who would ever think something like that would ever happen? And so we're talking amongst ourselves, and my dad's like, I got a distress call. Surely somebody heard it. And so we put on our life jackets. We had enough for, I think I had 2. My dad had 2. I think Adam had 1. We still had the cooler. But again, if you remember earlier in the story, there was 2 coolers.
Yeah, one had bait, one had
right. And he inadvertently grabbed the one that had bait, not the drinks.
Gotcha.
So he just didn't know which one was which.
Yeah.
So, but thank God we had that to hang on to in the life jackets. So it was like 5-foot seas, pretty windy. And also during that time, I don't know if you're familiar with like El Nino and the La Nina, with the different currents and water temperatures and that sort of thing.
And I'm not too familiar with the Gulf though. So like, I mean, I know it gets nasty, but it's like really short swell period usually. Right?
Well, and again, I don't know if that was because of El Nino, but like at night, so later that night, it got extremely cold.
Oh,
the water temperature got really cold.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it was to the point where, I mean, I could tell the hypothermia was starting to set in.
Really? Yeah. I've noticed that
from being in the water, it's at night, wind's blowing, and super dark, So if you can imagine just bobbing up and down in the Gulf.
I can't.
And just having in the back of your mind that obviously there's sharks in the water, And I just remember being extremely cold, and my dad just basically trying to hug me and try to keep me warm. And again, it was just pitch black dark. And so the only light that we had was from his watch. So he had, like a Casio G-Shock watch. And I would constantly ask him, hey, what time is it? And he would turn it on just so I could see some light, And it was one of the eeriest things. You're just sitting there floating in the water in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, pitch black dark, and you have no idea what's going on around you. You have no idea, Now, knowing my mother, we're sitting there joking around like, oh, she's going to have the National Guard looking for us, so we'll be fine, We just got to make it through the night. So that was day 1. Okay. So now it's day 2, Sunday. Okay. Sun starts coming up, start warming up. Then it's the opposite extremes, extremely hot. Okay. No sleep, because again, it's just like a steady 5-foot, 20 knot wind. Right. And, and even when you would try to like close your eyes, you would almost drown. You just get slapped in the face with waves, So couldn't
gotta
sleep.
be on you gotta pay attention.
Yeah, trying to survive. Right?
Yeah.
And that morning, at the time, it wasn't FWC that was in Florida. It was Marine Patrols. The Marine Patrol, my mother, I want to say it was like around 10 o'clock that night, Saturday night. Obviously, we didn't make it back home. So she contacted the local sheriff's department. And then close to midnight, she contacted U.S. Coast Guard, basically reporting a late return or no return. And my uncle, who also did a lot of offshore fishing, he kind of knew the areas that my dad fished, right? So he was able to kind of direct. And that's another thing too, is my dad didn't leave a float plan, which is extremely,
we stress that all the time.
Right. So with no float plan, my mom literally had nowhere to start. She didn't know where to start to look. But anyway, my uncle, he kind of had a general idea of where we might have been fishing. So he notified Marine Patrol of that. They didn't send anybody out that night, obviously, because you can't see anything.
Yeah.
Right. So they had to wait till that morning. So at first light, they dispatched boats out, and that was at 6:30. By 7:30 a.m., they found the boat. So had we have stayed with the boat, we would have been rescued.
Yeah.
That day. Because it was still anchored. It didn't move.
Easier said than done, though.
So then search and rescue begins with Coast Guard, right? So we're floating, bobbing in the water, and we start to see Coast Guard helicopters. I mean, you see the orange stripe, we knew it was Coast Guard, flying overhead. They would fly right over us. And then, 30, 45 minutes later, be a jet that would fly by. And so we could tell that we were being, they're trying to find us, but it was like finding a needle in a haystack,
So frustrating.
Yeah. You got to imagine from their vantage point, I mean, it's white capping.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost impossible to find anybody, right?
Yeah.
So extremely hot during the day. From what I can remember, we would have like cobia sharks, swimming up to us in the water, and we're just basically hitting them in the nose, trying to get them, keep them off of us, and rolls around to the second night. It's back, basically went from cold to hot. Now we're back to freezing again, and again, pitch black dark, can't sleep. And I don't know if you've ever tried to stay up past 24 hours.
You start losing it.
Start losing it.
You're probably hungry. You're dehydrated.
Dehydrated, right? We had no
did
food.
Did that go through your guys' mind at all? Like, or were you just still thinking like, we got to try to survive?
No, I mean, we're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Trying not to drown.
Yeah. It's nasty out.
Extremely nasty. Yeah. But obviously the thirst is starting to become number one.
Yeah.
We're very thirsty. I mean, you can theoretically only go like 3 days without fluids, So, go through another night. I just remember little details. I was thinking about this last night. I was reading some of the newspaper articles, about some of the things that I witnessed. I don't know if you've ever seen like the bioluminescence.
Pretty incredible.
Yeah. So that, I think, if I remember right, on the second night, you just kind of wave your hands to that and saw that. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then, so the next morning rolls around, third day, be Sunday, June 15th. Starts to warm up. Now, at that point, on the third day, hallucination starts to kick in. Okay. So everybody, including my dad, who again, he had throat cancer, so all of his saliva glands were removed. So it's like 100 times worse for him, and he's crying out for, I need something to drink. I just remember, looking into the water, and in my mind, I would see like a town, like streets and stuff. And I would take my life jacket off, and I'd try to swim down to get something to drink or get some help. And of course, as the closer I got, the further away it got, and then it would just vanish. I mean, it's like what you would see in a movie, like you're out in the desert and you see an oasis. I mean, that was real. I mean, it literally looked like it was real.
Holy shit.
So my mind's playing tricks on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would happen, and I'd realize I just dove like 20 foot for something that's not there, and almost basically drowned myself, and I went back to the surface. My cousin was starting to hallucinate. He was calling me by his sister's name and all that kind of stuff, right? And he kept taking his life jacket off, and he was saying, "I'm hot," and he kept dipping his head under the water, and he put his life jacket back on. While he's doing that, my mind's tripping. I'm just wandering off, trying to, I'm seeing like floating water bottles, all kinds of stuff, and I'm basically losing it. Meanwhile, my dad, he's kind of going in and out of consciousness, and so we had him strapped to the cooler. At one point, we actually tried to get him inside the cooler. It's like a 120 quart cooler. It's a pretty big cooler. Of course, that didn't work. And I remember it was probably like had to been like midday that day. And my cousin took his life jacket off. And I just remember looking in the water, and I just basically saw his hand reaching up for help. And I literally just watched my cousin drown. Yeah, and there was nothing I could do. At that point is when it was like something snapped in my head, is like, we're going to die. Me and my dad are going to die if we don't figure out a way to get out of here. And meanwhile, Coast Guard jets, helicopters are still flying overhead.
Still going back and forth.
I don't ever remember seeing a boat, but we did see aircraft, and they couldn't see us. So at that point, it was like, you're losing hope. We're not going to be found.
Jesus, man.
So I took my life jacket, and I took the straps, and I tied it to one end of the cooler on the handle, and I had my dad on the opposite end. And I just kind of oriented myself, figured out where the sun was at. I'm like, all right, well, this is due north. I need to swim towards land. Hopefully it lands only like a mile away. I can make it, So I'm swimming, and I lift my head up, and I'm like, I'm swimming to the west, and I just kind of redirect myself. And so I remember my dad having, slight conversations with me, basically saying, Chris, I'm going to die. I got to get something to eat, something to drink. I was like, Dad, just hang in there. I'm on the way. I'm going to, get something to drink, get some water. And it got to be probably, I don't know, I'm estimating like around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 6. It was kind of late in the day. I saw a jet flying overhead. Again, it's still like, 3 to 5s, So prior to that, it just got to the point where we saw so many jets flying over and helicopters where it's just like, they're never going to find us. But I was like, I need to take, one more effort and see if I can't flag them down. So I took my life jacket off, and I waved it. So I'm basically ducking my head, underwater, and just waving it frantically, hoping that they would see it. And then I popped my head back up, put my life jacket back on. I look up, and I see the Coast Guard basically do a maneuver and circle back.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, maybe he saw me. So I did it again, did it a second time. And then he did another loop, and he basically dipped his wings 2 times, signaling to me that he spotted me, right?
Wow.
Now, prior to that, the jet, and funny story about that is that jet was headed back to Mobile, Alabama to refuel. And it was just basically going straight back. It wasn't even, it was done doing the search and rescue part, and it was on the way back to refuel. It was just by the grace of God that he passed right over us. And
wow.
Saw us. Yeah. So prior to him spotting us, I would say probably about 45 minutes prior to that is the last time I communicated with my dad. And so I turned around, I'm like, Dad, they found us. We're going to be rescued. And he had like a big, like a straw hat on, right? And it was covering his face. I couldn't tell, but I lifted his hat up, his face was in the water. And I don't know, I would assume, he had passed out, and his face was blue. So I tried to keep his head up. Within minutes, there was a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter there, dropped a diver in the water. So he swims to me, he goes to grab me first. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Grab my dad. My dad he's not breathing. He's blue. Take him first. So he grabs my dad, and I told the guy something. Again, I'm out of my mind. I'm hallucinating. I'm like, I can make it back. Just take my dad. I'll meet you back at land, And the guy's like, no, I'm coming back and get you.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he takes him back to the chopper, comes back, gets me, brings me back in the helicopter in the basket. And I just remember sitting in the helicopter, looking out the bay door, the sliding door, and just thanking everybody on the helicopter. Just thank you so much for rescuing me. Meanwhile, I look to my right, and they've got my dad in the back. They're doing like a tracheotomy, doing CPR, trying to revive him. But of course, he had passed. But I just remember sitting there as a kid, just watching the helicopter fly over trees, and just like, I've never been so happy just to see trees, to get out of the damn water, I was asking for water. Of course, they didn't have any water on the helicopter. So I'm like, man,
They have water on the helicopter.
And then they take me to Tallahassee Airport. They had an ambulance there waiting for me to take me to the hospital. I remember getting to the ambulance, and there was a ton of people, at the airport. And I get in the ambulance. I'm like, hey, you guys have any water? I'm like, no, we don't have any water in the ambulance. I'm like, you're kidding me, bro.
Nuh-uh.
I'm going to die right here in the ambulance. I'm sure there's a reason behind that. They probably had to check my electrolytes or something. I don't know. But yeah, after that, I went to the hospital, and I slept for like 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the doctor had told my family that based on my electrolyte levels, I probably had just a few more hours left, and then my heart would have stopped.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask, like what kind of state you were in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that in a nutshell is basically what happened. And I mean, it obviously changed my life forever.
100%. I can't, dude. It gives me goosebumps. Like, I can't imagine just even like going into the night, like thinking, what's going to happen next?
Right.
And I think it's crazy. I don't know I forget what day it's usually like on day 3 or 4, they stop searching too. So I think
they were getting close to calling it off.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. This story is I think I'm stoked that you were able to come out and tell this story. I know it's not easy, but it happens a lot.
Yeah,
it happens more than I think the media tells people.
Yeah.
We just had an incident very similar. A guy went out. They found the boat drifting about 50 miles north with the outrigger still out and everything. I mean, where I'm getting to though, it's not uncommon, and it's almost like, what could we keep doing though? I mean, the technology's there. This is what 25, 26 years ago. Oh,
yeah, 98. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So and there's just so many different resources now, like that we can use to kind of I don't know, just to help save lives and help prevent this thing from happening again. And it's not like it's your fault or nothing. I mean, it's just the ocean's nothing to fuck with, and like,
yeah, I mean, it shows no mercy.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, is that there's just a lot of people that have no business being on the water.
Oh yeah,
because they're not educated.
Mm-hmm.
They're ignorant to what can happen, what kind of protocols you should have in place. That what if this happens? What if that happens?
I think always worst case scenario. Now, I'm not out to try to scare people. Like, we're all still going to enjoy, and that's another thing too. Like you still enjoy what you do. I think.
Oh yeah.
I think your your father's legacy probably still lives on. You're still doing. He's probably stoked that you're still out in the water. Some people, like I said, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but just to keep in the back of your mind, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
All right, guys, this week's episode is brought to you by Turtlebox. Turtlebox is becoming the best waterproof and Bluetooth speaker in the industry. They are basically indestructible. You can throw them in the water. You can run them over with your car. I bring it everywhere. Besides just the boat, I have it on the beach. I have it working out at the house. They freaking crank. I'm telling you guys, the best speaker in the industry. So check them out.
And kind of a side story is, at the time I was dating my, who is now my wife, my girlfriend, Tiffany. And, I was thinking about joining the Coast Guard because like, maybe that's the reason why, I made it, that's going to be my way to kind of pay back, Of course, it didn't work out that way. But, I mean, fast forward to, we have Brice, my son, who's now a captain.
Congrats. That's awesome, man.
And this past January, him and one of our other guides during duck season actually rescued 2 guys that had capsized their
No
boat.
shit.
I don't know if you saw that or not.
No, I didn't.
So
that was I was very thankful for that. And it was
Yeah, if you don't mind, tell us what happened, man.
So basically it was January out there in the Panhandle of Florida. Of course we do our guided duck hunts. So basically how it works is the guys will get out there around 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to get our spot, set out the decoys, get the blind ready, and then we'll come back to the ramp that we put in at to pick up our clients around 6. So me and my buddy, which I have my own boat, and then he has his own boat, and we're kind of hunting the same area. So me and him are kind of like sticking together. And it was rough that morning. I mean, I think it was calling 25 mile an hour, 38 degrees, felt like 29. So it was pretty cold. I was bundled up.
Yeah.
So we got back to the ramp around 5:30, and of course we're there early. So we have like a little, I think it was a Nomad grill actually, and it was cold. So me and him had actually our coals in there, like hot, like sitting around and hanging out. And there's a bunch of people putting in to go duck hunting. And so I watched like 3 or 4 people put in, and then the last truck comes around, I think it was like 5:50, 5:55. They pulled in right as our clients were pulling in, and they had a lawnmower trailer with a 12-foot John boat and had a 10-horse longtail on it.
like a boat you would pick up at a camp.
Yeah, like something to hunt like in ponds and stuff. Not hunting the coast like we are. I mean, we're hunting like some deep water sometimes, and like we're hunting these coastal bays. Like you don't want to run that stuff.
I see it all the time, man.
Yeah.
By us in like the Cape Fear River.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm running a 19-foot aluminum boat, and my buddy's running an 18-foot aluminum boat. Like they're built for some rough stuff sometimes. And so anyways, we're sitting there, they're putting in right next to us, and I joking my buddy, I'm like, dude, they may not even make it out the river. And so basically the ramp is right next to Apalachicola River. You come out and it's right there. And there's a bridge that goes overhead, and under the bridge is the ramp. And so we're sitting there getting our clients ready, and there's 2 guys on the boat, and then there's another guy that dropped them off. And basically how that ramp works is you can drive to this open parking lot to the right of the ramp, and you can see the river. And so basically those 2 guys.
So basically on one side is the launch, the boat ramp, and then if you walk, I'd say like 100 yards, 200 yards, you can actually see the river.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's the direction where you go duck hunting.
Yeah.
Up north and everything. So anyways, that guy that dropped them off, he went and parked over there to watch them go up the river.
Okay.
And they put in and they drove around. And of
Which
course,
I later heard that guy was going to launch a kayak too, right?
He was. He had a kayak on there too.
So-
Which thank God he didn't do that.
Yeah.
And it was not, the conditions were not for boats like that at all.
I'm sure the current rips there.
Hey,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, we're loading our guys up and sitting there, getting my guys' guns, put in the boat, and that guy had watched them. So basically they came around the corner, 12-foot John boat, 2 guys, big boys, guns, decoys, waders, stuff like that. They had their waders on, and I think they took like 1 or 2 waves over the bow and just right in the water. I mean, flipped the boat. Both of them fell in the water. So that guy watched them do that, like flip. And so he came over there to us, yelling at us like, hey, hey, hey. And he never like got out of his mouth like they're flipping. So I thought he was just coming over.
He's just panicking.
Yeah.
He's just panicking. And I'm loading my guys up. And I see him talking, but I was like, whatever. And
keep in mind, it's like, what time was it? Like 6?
It's like 6 o'clock of that.
It's
day.
pitch black dark.
It's still dark.
Yeah.
And finally, he's like, hey, those guys just flipped in the river. And then one of my clients relayed that to me. I was like, oh, okay, well, where are they at? He's like, right there under the bridge. So, of course, at that time, my buddy, Clay, he had heard that too. And he got up, got on plane, and I got on plane, and I had 2 of my clients get on the boat with me. I had 5, and I had 2 just in case if I had to jump in or something like that. And so we drove around, and right as we got out of the ramp going upriver, we saw one guy with a yellow life jacket on with like a strobing, like a headlamp.
Yep.
And then we saw, or we both saw the boat had a light bar, and it was underwater, but its light bar was still on. So my buddy Clay went straight over to that guy, grabbed him, and I knew there was 2 guys on the boat. So I was like, in my mind, I didn't see another light at all. I was like, well, he's under that boat right now. That or his waders filled him up and he's down there on the bottom of the river. So I went over there to the boat, clipped it up to my boat, basically backed up to pull it out of the water, and then flipped it, or tried to flip it. I looked under, there's nothing under it. And so at that time, my buddy Clay had already got that guy, calmed him down, came over there to us. He's like, is the guy under there? And I was like, no. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go downriver, you go upriver. And if he took his waders off, you should see it. Now, backtracking, when I was pulling that boat out of the water, I saw waders float by me.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, he's fine. And so my buddy went upriver to the bridge, and I went downriver just because I was thinking, well, he definitely did not. He's floating downriver somewhere into the ocean now. And so my buddy had found him trapped up. I guess he had pinned himself to the bridge, and there's like a wooden thing. And then there's the actual
pilings,
like the piling.
Yeah.
And he had trapped himself up under, holding on to a bag of decoys. And so my buddy Clay grabbed him too. And then he came down there to us. And I started picking up all their stuff. Their guns were floating, their waders, and all kinds of another decoy bag, blind bags, stuff like that. He came over to us and they're freaking out.
I bet.
Yeah, they're like.
How long were they in the water?
Not very long. Okay. Maybe 5 minutes. And now it's cold. It's really cold. Yeah. That wind is making it even colder. So as soon as they got out of the water, you
really only have
with hypothermia.
We just did an episode with a guy who was in the water in Lake Minnetonka, and he was in the water for what was it, an hour? Close to an hour.
Yeah,
they were like, "You should be dead."
Yeah,
and the fact that he survived.
Yeah,
but what's kind of crazy. And again, I don't know if you're a religious person, but God has a play in a lot of this stuff.
100%.
Brice was supposed to have left a little bit earlier than when he had left.
Yeah.
So he got delayed, I think, because of his clients or something. I don't know what the case was.
I think it wasn't really 6 o'clock when they showed up. I think it was a little bit later.
So had Brice got to the duck blind when he was supposed to have been, it would have been after those guys.
And we were the last people.
Isn't it amazing how things fall together like that?
It's
incredible.
Yeah.
We duck hunt a lot, and I'm visually seeing it. It's very similar to us. And we had a kind of a close call. We were running, we learned from these mistakes, right? We were running a piece of shit boat.
Yeah.
And we were going up the Cape Fear River, and this river is loaded with debris, logs. The tides are crazy. So when it falls, shit everywhere.
Right.
And I told after that one day, we were all kind of like, that wasn't really cool. We made it to the blind and back and everything. So now I told the boys, I was like, every time we go, let's at least have another boat beside us. You know, let's run out together. It's dark. You can't see shit. There's logs everywhere. Same kind of thing. And it's.
And that's another thing. That happens, in the duck hunting world a lot, and not necessarily on the coast. Just in the rivers and stuff. You hear about that all the time.
Yeah, I work.
And then people wearing waders, and the waders filling up, and they drown.
I work with the National Boating Safety Council and or committee. I'm sorry, and they do a lot of they bring up that industry. A lot of people forget about it. We're always so focused on the coast, or the Gulf, whatever. But the duck hunting is huge, and it's dangerous. People die all the time, and with the wader situation too, not a lot of people do it. It's one of those things the younger kids get into this hobby, and that's what I'm trying to get to them. We have a pretty young group of kids that follow us, 15 to your age, and we want to get them to hey, these hobbies are great, hell yeah, go for it, but first learn your grounds, and realize you don't keep going for it. Now I've been there, I've done it. I remember when I first started spearfishing, I was like, yeah, I'll go dive by myself at the jetty. Yeah, sure. I'm gonna go shoot some fish. You get all fired up, but you got to remember yourself. I'm telling people this just because we were doing dumb stuff, and we've all done it.
Yeah.
But goal is to education, in my opinion, is key.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a reason why there's laws in place. You shouldn't have to be told to wear your emergency kill switch, or to have flares or to have life jackets. You would imagine that's common sense. But in our situation, when we capsized, people just naturally think that, I see that on the news, but that would never happen to me.
Yeah.
Even people that are,
Yeah, they don't think it's
even people that are experienced on the water.
Some of the most experience, it happens fast.
Oh,
man.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm starting to notice too, it's awesome. Like when I was working with Cito and I'm being on the water all the time, I'm noticing like kids, 17, 18 years old wearing the new style life jackets, like the inflatables that you can pull. And it's badass. I'm like, that's awesome, man. Like you guys are doing what you should. If you're going 10, 15, 20 miles.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Trying to tell people recently too, we were out there one day and these guys have a handheld radio and they're like 40 miles offshore. I'm like, dude, that ain't gonna cut it. Like, yeah, you might be able to relay to somebody else, but it's just stuff like that,
Yeah. It's
because their excitement's going. They got a new boat, we want to go for it. Yeah, it's crazy.
I think the biggest thing, what I would like to, communicate to, all of your listeners is that, again, just think of worst case scenarios. What would happen? What if we had electrical fire? I mean, you're required to have a fire extinguisher, but a lot of people just kind of like, oh, I have one just because it's the law and it's mandatory. I don't want to get a ticket if I get stopped and get checked. But what would happen? What would you do? What would happen if your bilge pump failed?
Mm-hmm.
You have a backup plan. You have a bucket. You have some way of bailing. What would happen if, again, we were talking about like tourniquets and stuff.
Yeah,
you get lacerated and your friend's like bleeding out.
You have one, but
what are you going to do? I mean, you're 20, 30 miles offshore, and you go hit the VHF, and you haven't checked your VHF in years. You got it. You don't even know if it works or not. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's things like that where a lot of people don't put a lot of forethought into, and again, you don't want to scare anybody, but when you're out there, you're isolated, you're by yourself. And it's not like if you get injured, on land, you call 911 and
they're there.
Help is there. Yeah, you're offshore. Help is not going to be there, man. Especially like if the weather's is bad.
The last guy we had on the podcast, Jack Dottie, had a good quote. He said, "All these tools and all this knowledge and all this everything you have on board is just buying you more time before help can,
exactly.
professional help can get you, and that's so important."
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Insane story. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not, and I can't stress this enough. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but, and if there's anything else that you could get out of this, like just open to tell us, talk about it, whatever. One thing I was wondering, this is kind of going back to your radio signal. Do you know who picked it up? Was it?
So, and that's the thing is, I've got the investigation, the final report. Coast Guard, and honestly, I'd never even read this until last night. And so, when I was looking through it, and again, it would be easy to put blame. And my uncle, the father of Adam, was, if he could find a way to actually file a lawsuit, I think that's the direction he was going at the time, towards the auxiliary post for Coast Guard. Because what had happened after reading the report was my father put out a distress call, and of course, at that, he was only able to get that out, couldn't get coordinates on or anything.
Somebody obviously got it.
So it was picked up by the Alligator Point Marina. There was a lady there that was monitoring the Channel 16, and there was an auxiliary post in Shell Point and St. Mark's. I think all three of them heard it, and an additional vessel heard it. And so Shell Point logged it, but apparently at the same time, there was another vessel that was in distress for something completely different, like their battery died or something. I don't know. And so, anyway, long story short, because they couldn't get a response back from my father, of course, the boat had flipped, they just chalked it up as a hoax. Because there was confusion between the distress call they got from a different vessel and my dad. And that was in the report. It was just,
interesting.
So because of that, I think they changed some of the things that they, their protocols as far as how they would, before they go to the point of just saying, that's a hoax. I mean, they have to go through different steps now from these auxiliary posts before they can call it a hoax.
Yeah. Yeah, I briefly skimmed through an article. I was reading that there was an investigation. Didn't want to go too detailed with it. I was just curious.
Yeah.
just kind of move forward with that. I don't know if it ever settled or not, but
I don't know. Like I said, I mean, it's one of those situations where I was teenager, 18. I was happy to be alive.
Yeah.
Thankful. And then it's kind of a bittersweet situation, especially for my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she just lost the love of her life and my father, but yet I was her only son. And
now you have a full family, right?
I have a full family. I've got 4 kids.
4 kids, awesome, man.
So shout out to my wife, Tiffany. And
awesome, man.
My daughter, Elizabeth. He's my second born, Brice.
Are you the oldest?
Second oldest.
So yeah. My daughter, Elizabeth, she's 23. He's 20. And my son, Bear, he's 16. And my youngest is Scotland. She's 11. So
and it's awesome. Y'all still doing what you love. Still fishing, still hunting.
But again, the reason I brought up the story about Brice is that it's just kind of, again, not trying to be religious, but it's just ironic how I was rescued, and you go through like survivor's guilt. If you ever anybody's ever gone through a situation like that, whether it be a car accident or anything, and you're the only person that makes it, is like, or, guys that, fight in the military, and their platoon gets, bombed or whatever, and they're the only ones that make it. Survivor's guilt, It's like, why did I make it back? Why me and not my friend or my father? Why me?
Why other people that's happened in the past? Like,
Exactly, yeah. And then, you fast forward, 20 something years, and then an incident happens where my son, who's now a captain, rescues 2 people. So had I never been rescued, he never would have been born. And that would have never, you see what I'm saying? So you kind of can connect the dots.
100%,
And now we're sitting here talking to you, and this message may go out to help somebody. Again. Yeah, and help somebody.
And that one wasn't, I mean, I've also rescued another person. They had flipped their boat in a river in Tallahassee, and it was him, his girlfriend, and a puppy. They had flipped over in a river, and it was cold. I mean, it was really cold. And I came in there's like a fork at a river, and I came in from this way, and they had left and went this way. And when I was coming back, I was like, why not? I'll go right, just see it and see what it is. And of course, when I came around the corner on that right side, they'd flipped their boat. And
this is also during duck season, but in a different body of water.
Okay. Yeah, this is all freshwater stuff.
Still cold.
Yeah, still really cold. And so I saw them, jumped in the water. I don't even think I had my motor in forward. I was just like, oh God, like they're like screaming, and their dog had got trapped up under the boat. And so I got over there, got on top of the boat, trying to pull it over. This is a small, like 15-foot John boat. And I tried pulling it over, and I couldn't. So I just dove over under the boat, tried to grab the puppy, and it was chained up to the boat. So oh God. So I came back up for air. I told him, I was like, dude, that thing's chained up. And so he's like, all right. So we both went under there, and we pulled it, like basically just pulled its leash out, like under just pulled off his neck, pulled it up. It was a puppy. And the girl that was on the boat, she was freaking out. It was her dog. And I got her on my boat. I had taken my boots off, everything off, and before I jumped in the water, actually, I forgot about that. And I gave her my jacket, everything like that, and then came back over because I had to go get my boat because it was going down the river. I just swam over there because it hit land, so I drove over there and swam over there, got it, and drove back to him. And luckily he had a winch on the front of his boat, so we flipped it over and then winched it onto land I can't remember what we were doing. I think we let all the water out, and then I had to pull him back to the ramp. But I mean, if I wouldn't have gone that way, there was absolutely nobody on that lake.
And by the way, Brice is single, so for all the ladies that are listening.
I was about to say, you were a badass, man. And it's one of those things where it's like, whether you get rewarded or not, it's just...
he got to meet the governor, too.
Yeah. So, but like, where I was going with that, though, like, you just did what your brain did. Like, you no questions asked. Like, I'm going to go do it. Some people might hesitate to that. I'm the kind of person... I've only had one situation scared the shit out of me. It was... I just happened to be the right place at the right time.
Right.
I was working with Cito. I just got done a job. I'm like filling out the report, and I'm running back of this little channel.
Yeah.
And everybody's yelling at me. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I looked to I think it was off my port side, and there's a kayak flipped upside down. And I was like, whoa. I just natural instinct ran up to it and flipped the kayak over. It was like, a guy was like, I think he was like 79, 80 years old, laying like this.
Wow.
Yeah. Hottest day of the year. It was like middle of July. Apparently the guy was a diabetic. And I guess something, it passed out, rolled over. Why he was out on a kayak by himself at that age, that's another story.
Yeah.
But luckily, I rolled him over. I flipped up. Like, that adrenaline rush is just like all of a sudden. So I'm trying to get him up on the boat, but dead weight is no joke.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just like, there's another boat. He finally jumped on the boat, got him off. All this happened so damn fast. Luckily, I was this close to having doing CPR. I just started throwing up everywhere. I mean, he probably swallowed a lot of water, but dude, it was freaking close.
Yeah.
And that, to me, though, was just like, man, I was at the right place at the right time. If nobody, give that guy another 30 seconds.
He's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I panicked after I got him on. I'm like calling the Coast Guard, but meanwhile, I'm like, I'm in the bay. Like, I could have just called 911. I made a few mistakes, but like the funniest mistake was like, there actually was a doctor that came on the boat. So he was calming him down. I just trying to get this guy on land.
Right.
Dude, I know the water like everywhere. I drove that Sea-Tow boat right up on a sandbar. I'm just panicking, man. And now I'm just like, gonna get mud kicking up everywhere. Just like, get me it was.
Now, this is pre-qualified captain, right?
No, it was going on. Very small.
Get you on there.
Yeah.
Take a video of your own.
So, and it's not good with Sea-Tow either. You're like, freaking lights going off and shit.
Oh, yeah. So, look at this clown. He's stuck on the sandbar.
So, yeah, man. But it's like sometimes God's looking over, man. And you're at the right spot at the right time. And it's meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing too that I think is a great idea, and we talked about this earlier, is so we run a outfitter up in the Panhandle, Williamson Outfitters, and we have what, like 7 guides now, 6 or 7 guides.
Damn, that's awesome. I didn't know it was that big. Hell
yeah. So this past year, or this past season, duck season, we had a meeting before the season started, and we brought on an EMT to basically, go over, like a first aid course, how to properly use a tourniquet and that sort of thing. And that's one thing I would definitely recommend for any, charter fleets or
100%.
Anybody that runs, a crew like that, that's, to be educated. Because again, like in your situation, you start panicking, like if you have so much shit run through your head, and it's like you haven't properly taught yourself in certain scenarios, like, this happens, what do I need to do? What's the protocol?
Yep.
So
every situation is different.
Yeah, and a lot of these EMTs, they'll do it for like a small charge, but it's
worth every penny. Even CPR, man. Some people like,
and you might get like a deduction on your insurance too.
Yeah. Tell you what, man. Do you guys try to do that like annually, or if
we did for the first time this past year? We'll probably do it again. Yeah.
Maybe we can get together and like film that and just kind of get.
Oh, absolutely.
It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Show people like, hey, look, maybe every guy should do this, which I'm sure a lot do. I'm not saying it's bad, but like, I don't know, man, it'd be cool to do.
A lot of guys think, hey, this is kind of overkill, but when it comes to safety, again, from my perspective, I've been through a worst case scenario, and having that kind of a knowledge and knowing what to do when certain things happen and not panic, is worth its weight in gold. It can save somebody's life.
Your life or somebody else's.
Exactly.
Man. Yeah. And, guys, I appreciate this story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I know it's not easy, and our goal is obviously to kind of spread the word and get kids to pay attention and learn these skills to buy you more time.
Exactly.
So, before we wrap it up, I want to give you guys a shout out. What's a good website for your guys?
Check us out, floridaducks.com. And then you can look us up on Instagram.
What's your Instagram?
I'm at Cap_Chris_Williamson. Yeah.
Does your guys' guide service have one or at all?
It's at Williamson_Outfitters.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll tag you guys in all this stuff. But no, definitely if anybody will listen, check them out. I've been watching
duck hunting, gator hunts, flounder gigging, scalloping.
Man, I gotta go down there and do some of that. I never gator hunt. I want to do it though.
We even have he'll probably get mad if I mention this, but Chase Landry. Chase Landry?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, he's one of our guides too. During duck season. So
that's what I'm coming down.
Shoot him, Liz.
Dude, our duck season sucked, and I slow down that time of year, so definitely I'll come down.
That's fun. We all hang out at the lodge, eat food.
Cool.
So, shout out to our guides. We got Drew Monroe. He's crazy. Marcus, Trent. John Stevens,
Oh, yeah.
Clay,
I love it, man.
Ben Sapp,
Oh,
Jaden.
Ben.
I
Yeah.
love seeing this father and son just doing your thing and still
Love
living
it.
on to like. I know your dad's looking down, probably stoked.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And we're having fun doing it, like I said.
Yep.
And again, I mean, saving lives. You know,
Yeah.
Brice saving lives.
Yeah.
all right, guys, I appreciate it, and we'll go duck hunting this year, man.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.